You know what? Screw it. I don't have my countdown going. I just got back. My daughter was speaking this morning. And she did a very good job. So I just got back from that. Um, we're like 2 minutes away, but I didn't get my countdown going. I spent a bunch of time trying to get WSL working. And it looks like it is. So we'll try WSL today, see how that goes. Um, if it doesn't work, we'll just stop, right? Uh, so you're done with WSL, to be honest. That's rough. The only reason I'm looking at WSL today is because I'm curious about um, the new NX console stuff. So I'm very curious about that. We'll see. Marcus messaged me this morning, so I was getting ready for stuff, and he said that he's just moved over to WSL um, and really enjoying it. So he got me a bit psyched for it today. As a kid, and I would go to public speaking, I would sometimes freeze, and it was embarrassing. So, um, luckily, we spent some time talking and just giving her some tips, right? Because I do a little bit of public speaking, and I've done public speaking in the past. Um, but she got up there, and she was getting into things and introducing herself. She got up there, said her name, and all of a sudden her throat just closed off, and she choked for a bit, and she's like, "Oh, that was weird," laughed it off and moved on. I was so proud of her. She didn't get stuck. So hola, welcome to the stream, man. um I'm a bit concerned, Michael. This We've been stuck here on this PNPM stuff for a while, and let's see if we're doing anything at all right. So let's go into Tour of Heroes. There we go. Okay, so we're getting some stuff in here. That's good. Um, okay. So hopefully things are going well here. Blast away the node modules, then restart. Um, yeah, I don't use. It's not that good. Yeah, I actually like Linux. I'm concerned about WSL. Um, this seems to be taking a while, and I'm not happy. But we'll give it a little bit because it gives us a chance to talk about some stuff before we just diving in, right? So if we go take a look at let's go take a look at what I put up on Twitter today, right? Um, so here's my great. Now I'm getting weird vocal things, right? I was actually worried this morning. I woke up with a bit of a sore throat, and I was worried I wasn't going to be able to stream. And I had this idea. I don't want to sign in right now. So here's what I put up on Twitter, X, whatever, right? So SSR, partial hydration, zoneless, signals, right? NX Dev Tools, Signal Store, Daisy UI, um, and Colin Hacks is Zod. And then I was even talking about or thinking about potentially going as far as adding in like some X state down the road. Um, so hey Marcus, welcome. Schizophrenic. It's hard to build a secure file sharing but with limited and some better functionalities. Um, it is going to be hard to build that schizophrenic. Um, the side of it that's going to be difficult is actually the back end and the security. If you can get the back end and security done right, and you could probably do it with like Amazon, like using S3 buckets, and but you're going to want to nail that security, right? Because you don't want people adding files that um, somebody else could access. Like if I wanted to share my tax documents with my wife, right, for example, and that accidentally got leaked, that's a huge problem, right? They get social security numbers, income, all sorts of stuff off of those documents, right? Um, and so the piece of it that's not difficult schizophrenic is going to be the front end piece. The front end piece will be easier in comparison. It's your back end piece where you're going to have to worry about encryption. You're going to have to worry about access. You're going to have to worry about people wanting to share with other people, and how do you control all of those ACLs, right? The access control lists, and things like that. So like on a scale of 1 to 10, where would I put it? I would put it at like a 9.5 to a 10 easily. And the reason for that is the security implications of what you're trying to do, right? If all you want to do is just put a simple site together where people can just dump files, and then share those, like security and stuff's not that big of a deal. I would put it like solidly middle of the road, 5 to 6 on a scale of 1 to 10, right? But if you're really looking at stuff like Dropbox, and you said with limited but some better functionalities, um, man, you're biting off like a security chunk. You're gonna want somebody with very, very good security working on your team with you. Um, yeah. Hey, Michael Dev, good to see you, man. So while we wait for NX to do its thing, right? It's still creating my tour of heroes, and I'm concerned that introducing WSL with PNPM and Volta, I may be in a state where it's just never going to complete. We'll see. Um, but please check the previous messages. Um, yeah, blast away node modules and restart. Yeah, I need to branch out and get good at Java, Spring, and Angular so I could compete in the job market. Um, Abradores, I am perfectly happy to mentor you in Angular. We've had we've had a good long relationship. If you guys don't know, Abradores, we started interacting before. Was I streaming at that point in time? I don't even remember Abradores when we first started talking. Um, but it was on Reddit where we first started talking and stuff. I used to be way more active on Reddit. Um, so fighting Thule for the first 50. Hey, that hurts, man, but that's so true. Um, let's let's just give up, right? We're gonna give up. We're going to go back a directory, and we are going to um, let's kill our tour of heroes. Um, oh man, it did a bunch. Oh, okay. So it might have created something like the way I named it was a little bit weird. I probably should have done tour dash of dash heroes. Um, I don't know if I want to jump back into WSL today. Um, Yeah, no problem, Overlords. Definitely one love, and definitely some code reviews, definitely some stuff like that. Um, you're gonna have to track me down. I will tell you that. I I am fairly busy right now, and that's a horrible excuse, but um, things get dropped. So if it feels like I'm not helping you out, the best place to look for me is honestly on LinkedIn or Twitter. Just DM me in those places. That's the places where I'm gonna see my DMs the fastest and easiest. Um, but very very happy to help you out, and just give you some advice and stuff. Just need to be an average developer, which shouldn't be that much of a dude. I hope someday I'm an average developer. That's where I'm. That's my hope, is just to make average developer. I'll be honest with you. So let's pnpm create NX workspace. Um, and let's add. Let's go take a look at NX really quick. And then once we get this running, I want to take a look at this stuff here, right? Is this my NX dot? No, that's Excalidraw. Um, so let's look for create NX workspace. That's the one. I want to see on the so create NX workspace. Let's look at our generators. No, that's not what we wanted. I just wanted to see with like create NX workspace. Is this what I'm looking for? It creates a new NX workspace. Yes, I agree. It does create a new NX workspace, but what I'm specifically looking for is that is not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for, can I add Tailwind right off the bat? And so maybe it's just better to create NX workspace. There we go. All prompts. Formatter, framework, interactive name, next, NX Cloud, PM, prefix routing, standalone, style, unit test runner. It looks like I'm going to have to add the Tailwind later. So we'll just do create NX workspace. And that will be good enough. And so, do I mentor devs? I do. Michael, maybe 15 to 20 minutes on stream could be, and maybe it could be like, thank you for that, Marcus. Maybe it could be something we do on stream, but we'll have to talk about that, Aurelores. Michael is just projection this week. I tried, yeah. Well, it's not wrong, right, Michael? But Michael Small. But I do mentor people, Michael, Michael Dev. Um, I'm kind of passing it on. Your wife was a huge inspiration to me and continues to be. She's very she's an amazing person. You are too, to be honest. Um, and that's when I started mentoring. I tend to mentor. I tend to mentor uh, more women, to be honest. And there's I mean, I hate saying it because sometimes people don't understand why. So I've got two daughters. I've got one daughter that's very interested in tech. I have a very selfish reason for that. Um, my selfish reason is my daughter, as she gets into tech, I want her to have incredible women that she can look up to, right? So um, if I can help make things better, then that's the direction I want to go. Um, so um, it's not that I don't think men need help. It's that I have a very selfish reason. I want to make things better for my daughter. So um, don't um, definitely happy to help, Arboloris. We're good friends, and I'm happy to help you learn Angular and just help give you direction and guidance, right? Um, but yeah, I do mentoring. A lot of times I tend to reach out. So there's somebody who attends the streams here who I helped out, and um, she's given me good insights into the streams too. And man, she's kicking ass right now. Just it's so incredible to watch her career right now. So yeah, no, you won't be a bother at all. You won't be a bother. I will probably be the bother because I there's so much going on in life right now. So you won't be a bother. I wouldn't say yes if it was a bother. I just want to um, set some expectations here, right? Um, like I intend to stream during the week, and it just doesn't happen because of various things going on. Um, so the stream today was highly inspired by the Angular team's presentation at Google I/O about what's new in Angular, right? Um, and there were so many cool things in that presentation, and so many cool things that are coming, that I was like, you know what? Um, I talked about doing Tour of Heroes a while ago, um, but what if we took that presentation from the Google team at Google I/O, and we took it one step further, and we took Tour of Heroes and we just added everything we can, right? Partially because it's cool, but partially because I think some of these things are very good decisions. Um, it is live on YouTube. Are you not seeing it on YouTube, Margaret? Let me take a look. Um, yeah, it's live on YouTube right now, Margaret. If you want to see it on YouTube, you can swap over to YouTube. Um, it's that's the link. If you want to watch it on YouTube, if you want to watch it on Twitch, there's the Twitch link also, and you can continue to watch it on X if you want to. Um, so yeah, um, building projects is the best, and you guys need to understand. Abradores he's a React developer. He's got experience. Um, so when he's looking for mentoring, he's looking specifically for Angular mentoring, and he's got a lot of React experience. And in fact, you'll see him trolling me in the chat, right? Um, so he does have experience building things, and I'm sure he's got some ideas. He's been talking to me about some ideas that he's got that he could build in Angular. The the tough thing is just knowing what direction to go, or if he goes a certain direction. Like when I first started writing Angular JS, my Angular JS looked very much like jQuery. Why? Because I was coming from jQuery, right? When I moved to Angular, my Angular looked very much like Angular JS, right? When I write React, my React looks very much like Angular, right? My Vue looks very much like Angular. It's just that's the way my brain is programmed right now, for lack of a better way to say it. And so sometimes when you're learning something, having somebody who can say, yeah, that's okay, but have you thought about this, or this, helps you understand what you don't know. And that's part of what I try to do on stream is we look at stuff and say, what do we know, what don't we know. So let's take a look at the stuff that I specifically got React experience. I watch Jason do things and I react to them. Exactly. Hey, Margaret, don't feel bad about it at all. Um, Feel free to ask any questions, right? Like this isn't the. I'm never going to get angry at you for asking a question unless. I'm not going to say never, right? It's unlikely that I get angry. Yeah. Um, and that's what we can help you with. What I want to do is take a look at this the stream today from the perspective of like an architect or a staff engineer or a more senior level engineer, right? And let's say we were wanting to create Tour of Heroes, right? Um, and we're in the architecture meetings and we're discussing we're discussing the technologies that we want to do. I will admit 100% out of the gate, a lot of what we're doing because it's cool. We're doing SSR because partial hydration is cool. There might be problems with this. We may run into issues, right? But that's content, right? For me, that's content. That's us struggling and figuring it out. If you were in an architectural meeting, right, and we're discussing, hey, we're going to create this application, Tour of Heroes. This is what it's going to do, right? We know what Tour of Heroes is going to do because we've seen the site. What technologies do we want to have, right? And this would be kind of my RFC or ADR or whatever you want to call it, right? Where you're presenting decisions and why you think those decisions are good, right? I'm not going to go fully into depth and be like, well, I looked at other things and this is why I chose this over that, right? Because really it comes down to it's cool. But let's talk about SSR, right? SSR and SSG are modern technologies that allow us to ship less to the browser and get a more responsive browser, right? So we get a better experience. Very cool. Partial hydration makes this better, right? So with partial hydration, we don't immediately hydrate the page and hydrate everything, right? The page can stay in kind of this partial state where some of it works, some of it doesn't work, but we can say, hey, when the user interacts with this, we hydrate it. Very, very cool. Also allows us to do streaming to the browser and stuff like that. Very cool. So this is going to allow our application to be more modern, ship less to the browser, and hopefully improve our CWV. That's one of the things that I want to be very cognizant of as we work through this. As we work through Tour of Heroes, let's look at bundle sizes. Let's look at our CWV stats, right? We'll run them through Lighthouse, which Lighthouse is designed to be mobile, but it'll give us a good idea of kind of what our CWV. If you guys don't know what CWV is, it's our core web vitals. So it's our LSP, our largest single paint. The application is going to look and see what's the largest piece that's drawn and how long does that take, right? There's a reactivity piece in there called INP. I forget what exactly it is, but basically what INP measures is when the user is interacting with your site, how long does it take your site to display something? That tends to show like lag and things like that. And I'm forgetting the third piece of CWV. For Web Vitals. So largest contentful paint, interaction to next paint, and CLS, cumulative layout shift, right? CLS is important because, and where CLS really shows up is if you click a button and then you add something to the screen, or if a user interaction happens and something happens on the screen. I've worked in projects all over the place where somebody is filling out a form, they go to click the submit button, an error shows up in the form, and they miss the button, right? Very, very frustrating, right? Or the error disappears from the form shifts up, and they miss the button, right? We fix the error, we go to click on the button, the form shifts up, and I miss the button, right? Very, very frustrating. CLS is like the friendliness of your site. INP is basically the way to measure the lag, and LCP is a good way to measure the perception of how fast your site is, right? Because once the first largest contentful paint is there, then the dopamine hit happens in the brain, and people are like, "Oh, yeah, the site's working," right? Even if pieces pop in after the LCP, right, the largest contentful paint, their brain is like, the site's already here, I can see it, right? So these are the core web vitals we'll be looking at, and you guys can definitely go take a look at them. I do need to be, I'm calling them CWV, but they are the core web vitals, and there's a whole bunch of information out there on core web vitals that you guys can read up on. So yeah. Architecture meetings, those exist. I thought development involved slapping stuff together and figuring it out on the fly. TBD Gamer, you're not wrong. Especially in like, what do they call it? Lean agile. Lean agile architecture is often an afterthought. But that doesn't mean that you can't think like an architect when you're doing things, right? So let's be real. If you just want to know if something looks like normal Angular code, just ask ChatGPT. Fastest and cheapest way to figure something out. Yeah, and that's not wrong, right? Lots of good AI out there. This is making me feel very afraid of the front end. There's more I don't know. I'm definitely just sticking an Angular application together, and that's okay, right? Like, there's a ton to stuff, but what we're doing, and Jan, he responded, and he's like, yeah, this isn't beginner friendly. Like, what's the point here? The old maps, like here be monsters or here be dragons, or right, like the old maps, right, where they didn't really know, like South America was called Patagonia, right, because it meant Bigfoot, right, because there were monsters there that had big feet, right, and like the really, really old maps where people just didn't know stuff. We're kind of heading into that territory. This is how cool has Angular gotten, and less you should do this, right? Do what you know. And like, one of the biggest pieces of advice that I can give you as you become more and more senior, like, the joke is, right, that when you talk to a senior developer, you can tell how senior they are by how quickly they respond with "it depends," right? That's the way to look at things. A lot of the stuff I do out of my preference, and this is how I like to write code. Is what I'm doing now the best for the company where I work? I don't know, right? Like, if we take my current job, I've been there for 3 weeks. I don't know enough about anything at my current job to be like, this is the best way to do it. I don't know the skill levels of the developers. I don't know, the history of stuff. I don't know the tooling, the libraries, and all of that stuff, right? I've only been there 3 weeks. There's not a lot that I know. So when people ask me, is this the way we should do this? Well, it depends. This is why I like to do it, right? But let's talk about, what's best for the organization, the company, whatever we're doing. If you feel like you're slapping things together, but it's successful for you, you're not wrong, right? Yeah, no point. Very esoteric knowledge, because, for example, for normal Angular enterprise apps, those web vitals are basically useless. Most are bank apps who do not need the most polished experience. They just need to work. I'm going to tell you right now, I am part of a team where we're looking at Core Web Vitals right now. Um, um, and I think that if you are in any organization, AI has beaten us, right? And this sounds very dire, but AI has beaten us if we define ourselves as only writing code. AI can write enterprise level code, um, with all of the messes that enterprise level code entails right now. They can do it, right? Almost every AI can do it. And they'll write passable code. It's not code that I would want to maintain, I'll tell you that. But the AI has beaten us, and the code writing abilities of AI will only continue to improve, right? So we need to distinguish ourselves as engineers and developers in this modern era. We need to realize and embrace AI for generating code. So where is our value proposition then, right? Because if all we do is write code, well, AI can write code 24/7. The cost of AI is probably cheaper than me. AI can write code that I can do in, something that takes me a couple hours. AI can do it in a couple of seconds, right? There's a whole bunch of things that AI can do better. My value proposition is in things like Core Web Vitals. My value proposition is in things like architectural decisions. My value proposition, right? And that's the way I think everybody needs to be. We need to be thinking critically about what's happening, right? Because AI is going to produce a whole bunch of code, right? We need to be able to think critically about that code and be like, well, yeah, that code works, but we aren't hitting our Core Web Vital targets, right? For you to pass Core Web Vitals, you have to be hitting the 75th percentile right now for all the vitals. And there are different measures for each, right? So like your LCP needs to happen in less than 2.5 seconds to hit 75th percentile. Your INP needs to be less than 100 milliseconds. So if something happens in less than a tenth of a second, your UI needs to respond. And then for CLS, right, the layout shift, less than 10% of your page needs to shift on any on any given action. That's real value, because we just talked about, right, like LCP is the perceived speed of your page. The faster your LCP is, the faster people are going to think your page is, right? Whenever I talk about LCP, I think about like plates in the US. And when you go to like certain restaurants, you'll notice that the plates have certain colored rings around the outside. And if you put like a blue ring around the outside, it does certain things. If you put a red ring around the outside, it does other things mentally to the people, right? And a lot of places put, I think it's a red ring that makes you think that there's more on the plate than there is. Or maybe I don't remember, right? That's the way I look at LCP. LCP is not the actual speed of your page, it's how fast your page appears to be. And mentally, like as humans, perception is how the world is. Whether it actually is that way, it all comes down to perception. And a good argument for that is just the sheer number of flat earthers out there, right? No amount of data will convince them otherwise, right? They perceive the world a certain way, and that's the way the world is, right? And that's just the way our brains are wired as humans. We take these shortcuts. The same with INP, the perceived lag, right? There are very few humans that can determine like 120 hertz. Why do we have 120 hertz monitors for gamers? Because gamers are very sensitive and perceive that lag. Hey, Potsdama, thank you for following, right? And then CLS is just how friendly your site is, right? Have you taken the time to make your site friendly to people who use it? So yeah, I'm kind of on my such as back end or DevOps or front end. Yep, very very valuable skills, and that's where we're going to be like our AIs, right? Um, so Marcus, I actually purchased a Kircher subscription and trying out a little bit. It is not a horrible experience. You'll have to review it like you review the code of a junior engineer. Exactly, Mark. Like Marcus, the way I look at AI coding right now is I look at it like pair programming, where one of the pairs is very very eager, but very they're not knowledgeable, right? Very very eager. They've memorized the entire documentation. They aren't knowledgeable about whether the code should be written that way. The way you put it is, yeah, like a junior, right? But yeah, it's just very, very eager, very, very, they want to just spit out a bunch of code. That code may or may not be good. It's up to you to determine if it is, right? Very much pair programming. If you don't understand the code AI is written, make sure that it becomes code that makes sense. Yeah, exactly, Marcus. I think the important thing first is to lay down the foundation before you start AIing. Lay down the fundamental structure. Very, very sound advice, Marcus. Um, 100% agree. Yes, of course. Just knowing how to code is the easy part. Knowing architecture, other fields. Yep, Obradores. But it has always been that way. It was just in 2019 that people were hired for their basic coding knowledge. And it has always been that way. And that's why I look at my stream. We write Angular as a vehicle to discuss bigger topics, right? We write Angular because I enjoy Angular and I know Angular. But the bigger topics are the part that's going to make your career better, right? And that's my goal, right? If you attend my stream, I hope you learn something that will make you better as a developer in the coming week or weeks, right? That's always my goal here. Domain knowledge, 100%. Banking versus insurance versus healthcare. Yep, domain knowledge is very important. And if you want to distinguish yourself very, very quickly in a company, pick up the domain knowledge, right? Don't just do tickets, but learn why you're doing that ticket, right? Talk to your partners in product, talk to your managers, talk to your seniors, and start picking up that domain knowledge and understanding the domain that you're a part of. It all comes down to perception. I'm bad in VATs. Dude, I just finished. I just finally got the time to watch Fallout on Amazon Prime. Was it Amazon Prime? I think it is. I don't know. I just finished watching Fallout. Man, those scenes where he has to be using VATs just because of the way, the it's very gory. There are certain parts of the Fallout show that are very gory, and I won't describe them. But just because of the way that when the shots are happening and just how quickly they happen and the reaction of the shots, that dude has to be using VATs. Yeah, season 1 is good stuff. I totally agree. Very much enjoyed it. So let's actually write some code today. It looks like we've got our Tour of Heroes stuff going. Very, very cool. So let's go into Tour of Heroes. And let's npm install this. And maybe it already did. I think it probably does it as one of the steps, right? But while that's happening, zoneless is the future of Angular. Zone.js was amazing, and the best explanation that I ever heard, and I can't remember if it was Minko or Mishko talking about Zone.js, but they basically said that Zone.js is performing open heart surgery on the browser at runtime, right? There's a reason that Zone.js has to hook into all the things it does. Zoneless is going to allow us to get more towards huge change detection cycles, right? It brings its own problems and its own solutions, right? Like, I don't think for some applications, Zone.js is still probably the best way to go. For the future, as Angular gets more and more, more and more mature in the way that it's doing zoneless change detection, this is the way to go. I highly recommend that you guys investigate Zoneless. Maybe not in production yet, but you should be looking at Zoneless at your organization, maybe in some experimental branches. You should be looking at Zoneless on your own, in your personal stuff, because I believe this is the direction that Angular is going to go, and I think it's a good direction for Angular to go. Even though it does bring some of the problems of how do I put this without sounding elitist? I'm going to sound elitist, so I may as well put it elitist. The way some developers write enterprise Angular code will not work in Zoneless because they don't understand change detection, and their code will not update in a Zoneless environment because some of the stuff that Zones.js does will not happen, and so their changes won't be replicated to the browser. Learning Zoneless and learning some of those, how to handle those issues will help, right? My Zoneless is already in production. I've released Zoneless to production too. I'm very I think it's fine. NX DevTools, I'm an NX DevTools shill. I 100% admit that. Well, I can't be a shill because they're not paying me to say this. I guess you could call me a sycophant. Is that what it is if they don't pay me? Right? Like, I love them. NX DevTools maniac. I don't know what to call it. They don't pay me. But if you're not using NX DevTools with Angular, you're handicapping yourself a bit. All of the migrations, when tooling changes, is there for free with NX DevTools. All of the setup is there for free. Adding Tailwind is painless, right? There's so much that you get from NX DevTools that I'm just going to come out and say you should be using it, but I am very biased in that opinion, and I recognize that I'm very biased there. I have good reasons for why I'm biased, and any organization I'm at, I introduce NX DevTools. The same with Signal Store. I'm very biased on Signal Store. There's a lot of other state management tools out there. I just think that in its current iteration versus all the other state management tools out there, Signal Store has the potential to be the most targeted, the most reusable, the most composable store tool out there versus everything else. So I'm also very, very biased. I am also, a Signal Store maniac, sycophant, whatever you want to call it. That's me. Fanboy. That's probably the best way to put it, right? I'm an NX fanboy. I'm an NG, like Signal Store fanboy. Daisy. I slept on Tailwind for a long time. I think Daisy UI is the best way to just get a UX up and running. And it gives you the best path to moving to your own design system if you want to do that in the future. And then Zod is just one of my personal favorites. I'm a huge fan of Zod. So that's the reason why we're picking this stuff. There's other reasons to use Zod, like runtime type checking. Like TypeScript provides compile time safety, but Zod provides runtime safety. There's good reasons to use Zod, right? So that's that's my quick rundown. Let's get this all committed. So we're all good here. Let's go ahead and commit this stuff, and we'll get this pushed, and then we'll get on a branch where we can start adding some stuff to it, right? While this is running, let's go ahead and open repositories. This is not what we wanted. Open repository. Oh, there's my browse right here. So Tour of Heroes. Let's select this one. And while we're doing this, is Akita a good state management tool? Akita is a great state management tool. Well, let me put it this way. Akita was a good state management tool. I think Akita was bought by oh, what is that big company in Indianapolis? It does the PHP. Um, it's the big content company. Why can't I think of it? As soon as somebody says it, I'm going to. Um, Sales, thank you. Salesforce, yes. I believe Akita was purchased by Salesforce, and when that happened, then they started working on Elf. So I think Akita is a bit old in the space, and I don't know how much Salesforce has done to maintain Akita. Um, Elf, I believe, is what took over from Akita. Elf was a lot of fun, but it's not as composable. Like whatever you're using is probably good for your team, right? Um, you you should always be using what makes your team the most productive and not what not what somebody like me is out there pushing, right? um, but yeah, Akita was good. It's been a long time since I've used it. Elf is the newer version of Akita, because I think Salesforce, right, owns Akita. Signal Store, but I'm not sure I'm using it incorrectly, but I'm achieving things. And that's the like Signal Store is so new that there's a whole bunch of changes in Angular where I still think the community just hasn't determined like what is the best practice. There's a lot of people out there doing amazing stuff to help us get to best practices. Michael Small, who's here, has been doing a lot with Signal Store. Rainer has been doing a lot with Signal Store, right? There's a lot of people out there producing good documentation, pushing us in good directions with Signal Store. Um, yeah, PyMNG plus Tailwind is what I ended up with for controls, and that sounds good, right? PrimeNG plus Tailwind sounds good. What's your opinion on using the facade pattern of state management libraries like NGRX? Um, okay, this yeah, Austin, very very good question. Um, when we talk about NGRX, there there's a broad topic here, right? When most people mention NGRX, what they're actually talking about is NGRX Store, right? Which is the Redux version of NGRX. Is that what you mean, Postuma? Um, you got that on an interview? Oh man, that is talk about a landmine-ridden interview, Michael. Wow. Um, um, I'm going to assume that you're talking about NGRX Store until you correct me. Um, no one had ever convinced him yet. So here's my he, here's the architect in me. It depends, right? Um, here's my real opinion. If you had asked me this question 3 years ago or 5 years ago, I would have told you slap a facade on the front of your NGRX store right away, um, and um, use that facade. Um, NGRX store has come a long way in getting rid of a lot of the boilerplate. It's come a long way in getting rid of a lot of the pain points that people had that made facades very attractive. Um, Modern NGRX store, and it's been a while. Like it's been maybe 18 months since I last worked with like NGRX store. I don't think you need facades anymore. Um, I think that NGRX Store has done a good enough job of fixing the issues that it had that you don't need those facades. I will tell you right now that you would have a hard time convincing me that we need NGRX Store in an application, right? If you wanted to add NGRX Store to an application, we would need to have a discussion about why. And you would need to convince me why you think that's the best case, right? Um, and the reason for that is not that I think NGRX Store is bad. I actually really like the Redux pattern. I think the Redux pattern solves a lot of issues. But I also think that the Redux pattern can create issues that most teams are not mature enough to handle. And that's not to say that, oh, I'm this amazing developer. I don't know that I'm mature enough to handle all the issues that like a Redux pattern can cause, right? I think if you're going to adopt Redux, you need to go into it very, very cognizant that we're adopting Redux. We need to be following Redux best patterns. We need to be following, NGRX Store best patterns. We cannot be straying away from that, because once we do, we wind up with a mess. You can convince me to add component store, but I'm there as soon as you say signal store, right? Like signal store is that piece, that shim that I think fits almost everywhere because it can be so small. But you can have signal store get data from NGRX store. You can have signal store get data from XState. You can have signal store get data from Apollo. You can have signal, right? And signal store can compose um, your model for the view that you're trying to do in a very, very easy way. And with all the feature stuff that you can write your own features, you can make it very, very customized and very, very reusable. And it lowers the bar to entry for most developers into getting into reactive code. Um, so that's my you're trying to use a facade pattern with data access libraries in an NX workspace. My suggestion is, instead of trying to use the facade pattern, flip it on its head. And instead of trying to go global store, use NGRX signal store, create custom features for what you're trying to do. And we'll do that with this stream if I ever write some code today. You guys are asking some amazing questions. And you guys have got me talking, right? And this is I've recently, so when I applied to speak at NGConf, one of the new titles I gave myself is code philosopher. I love talking philosophy behind code. If you want to nerd snipe me, start asking philosophy, right? Yeah, data access libraries. But my suggestion: start signal store, start very local, and move more global as you need to. And then if you need to actually introduce NGRX store, you've already got the local facades in place with your signal store, and your signal store can just interact with the larger store by issuing actions, and handling the stuff that comes back from reducers and things like that, right? So you would naturally be building a facade of sorts, but your state management would be signal store driven. But you could write custom features where you could say, with maybe you decide to put your user in NGRX store, right? And so in your signal store, you could just add a custom feature that's with user, and that with user knows how to interact with NGRX, how to issue the actions, how to handle all the updates and stuff like that. But you're still getting a local store for the view that you're trying to create. But it's composable because you could put that with user in any store that you build. Does that make sense? What do you think about events plugin for Signal Store? It's nice. We do have it, but I prefer not to use Redux pattern in the new project. Um, man, I love Redux. I haven't worked with the events plugin too much. I'm hoping to start using it more so that I can have a better opinion. But right now, my opinion is I love Redux, and the reason I love Redux is let's go to ngrx.io, right? I believe this is NGRX. Nope, that's Angular. Where's my NGRX stuff? Well, we can just pop open a new window, right? So ngrx.io, right? And if we go to state and we go to the store and why use store, right? Nope. This is beautiful to me. And the reason is that I can follow my data through here, right? There's a whole bunch of other issues that arise, right, with improper actions and improper reducers. And once you start throwing in effects, things get really, really murky and muddy, right? But the fact that there's this single loop and there are only certain places where I can hook in and affect the loop, as you know, as an engineer, this is an ideal state for me because it's easy for me to reason about where state comes from, right? When it gets more complicated where something else could come into the store from this angle or this angle or this angle, now it becomes way more difficult to reason about state. Right, there's a reason that I really like X state, and there's a reason that I really like Signal Store. um, I like state machines as a way to express front end applications, right? And the reason for that is if we think about like a typical form, right? A typical form has an empty state, it has an error state, and it has a successful state, right? If we boil it down to the three simplest states, right? Well, if we boil this down to a state machine that's handling that state, in the empty state or the unfilled state, all they can do is fill things out. And in that state, if they click the button, like to submit, that button's not going to do anything. The cancel button could go back to a previous state. It could do a whole bunch of stuff, but there's really only like a couple of ways to get out of that state, right? Either we put the form into an error state, right, which moves us to the next state, right, through user input or who knows what, right? We click cancel, which then moves us to a different state, right? Or we click the save button, but the save button's not going to move us to a state because we haven't reached the state, the save, like the successful state, right? In the successful state, the cancel button could still send us backwards, right? Maybe to an unfilled state or who knows what. But the save button is going to transition state at that point, right? But in the other two states, in the unfilled or the unable to submit state and the error state, that save button can just be a no op, right? And it's the same way with like Signal Store. You can provide stores that change based on what's going on. So if you want to go into an edit state versus a create state, well, now we're talking about state machines, right? Because in the edit state, maybe they can't change the ID. Maybe other things need to happen, right? But in the create state, we don't have to provide an ID, and like there's differences there. So that's why I really like state machines. That's why I really like Signal Store. So yeah. Events plugin, I haven't worked with it too much, but events plugin basically is like reducers and effects, right? Or actions, actually. It's more the action stuff, right? I need to work with it some more before I have an opinion. But I really like Redux, so I'm probably going to find the events plugin nice because I have created my own way of doing events for different things. Having an opinionated way to do that, I think, will be good. Coding streams are overrated, but It is a great plugin to move from global NGRX to Signal Store. Yeah. Hoping if I can get a platform for my talk idea that I can talk about pure functions as a gate. And I'm very interested in that. And um, Michael, you've got two of the organizers of TinyConf on here. You guys just need to get us in. You guys need to just get us into doing something so that we can get a D and the three of us can get TinyConf going. And then you've got a platform for your talk. Um, what's your opinion on event-driven architecture to avoid global store? Have you experienced that? Michael, event-driven architecture is my favorite architecture, and it's the architecture I think we should all be moving towards. Um, so, um, I've experienced a lot of event-driven architecture. For a while, I did mobile and I did desktop development. And modern mobile and desktop development is all event-driven, right? Where you provide functions that kick off, right? Like observer patterns. RxJS um, is an event-driven model, right? RxJS is the observer pattern, right? Most event-driven models are based on some form of the observer pattern. So introducing RxJS and signals, we're moving more and more towards an event-driven style of writing code for the web. I'm all there. I'm 100% in. My next question was actually going to be about the state layers, but you anticipated and answered it already. Thank you. I'm very, very passionate about state management. I've been doing state management for a while now. So if you want to get me talking, talk to me about state management, and we'll talk about all sorts of concepts. Will you talk at the NGConf? I don't know. If I get accepted, I will. If I'm not accepted, I won't. So it sounds like TinyConf isn't slated yet, but you guys need a few speakers before a greater CFP process. No. Usually what happens is the three of us get together on a call. We're like, we're going to do TinyConf this time. We put out the CFP, and then whoever comes, usually it really depends. We've been getting more turnout lately. I don't know what had happened this year. It's been so long since we've done it, but last year we were actually having to determine, which talks we were going to take. We try to take everybody, but we also have, we try to keep TinyConf into one day. And if you watch Marcus from last TinyConf, towards the end of TinyConf, Marcus had been there all day, and he was tired, man. Yeah, we we need to get that going, and we need to get a CFP out there. Anyway, let's get this committed. So we'll go ahead and push. We're gonna push this up to. Actually, before we do that, let's rename master to main. Because once it's pushed, it's always a much more difficult thing to do. But there are lots of arguments for and against. The main reason that I rename master to main is it doesn't cause me any pain, and it helps not cause pain in others. So I typically like to do that before I push. Origin, Tour of Heroes, Modern, Angular, and Tour of Heroes. Public access, and let's push. So there we go. We are now up on GitHub. And let's go ahead and branch. I always name my branches stream, and then I give them the date. So today is the 25th. So May 25, 2025. So there we go. So one thing, even if it's only you developing, I highly recommend just getting in the habit of creating branches and not pushing to your main branch. After the stream, I'm probably going to go protect main so that only PRs can go into main. And I recommend that you do the same. It's just helpful in the long run. And I love that GitHub's already getting Renovate added to my repo. We're good to go. Let's go ahead and let's just see if we can serve this. So npm or pnpm exec nx serve tour of heroes. So Git workflows, that is a good topic to discuss. Yeah. Yep. It was a great time, and we definitely need to make TinyConf 2025 happen for sure. Especially where like ngconf is out in October. If we could get something going in August or so, I think that that would be a good kind of midpoint, you know, getting us out towards October. Would I like to use Crystal? So, Ole, there's a couple of things that I really want to talk about. We're going to use Crystal, but there's another thing that I want to explore that I was thinking about. You know, in one of the various. For me, the shower is a place where a lot of ideas come. Right. I create a lot of projects online, right? And in every one of those projects, I add Daisy. In every one of those projects, I add, you know, Tailwind. And then I have to remember how to do it. It would be great if I could just create an NX generator that just adds Daisy for me, and then I don't have to worry about it, right? So yes, I want to use Project Crystal. Yes, I do want to show you guys how to create a generator that would allow you to do something like what I said, where in the future I can just use an NX generator to add Daisy to my projects, and we're off to the races, right? So you know, those are two things that I think we can discuss and work through together. And then to your point, Git workflows. Trunk-based development is the way that everybody goes now, right? You could do Git flow or things like that, but protecting the main branch is just the biggest piece that of advice that I would give everybody. You know, protect your main. So let's go and see if we can serve. There we go. So we're up and running. This is our tour of heroes. Awesome, right? Not great, but at least we're up and running. And we're going to fix this, right? Because right now it's bright white, and this is part of the reason. Like when I go into talking about Tailwind and Daisy, if you add Tailwind and Daisy to your project right out of the box, you get nice button experiences, you get nice controls, but you get a dark and a light theme for free, which is a huge win because you know most people like their dark themes. My eye doctor actually recommended to me that, you know, when the sun is up, you should be using a light theme. As soon as the sun starts to set, that's when you need to get into your dark themes. And it just causes less eye strain and things like that. But there's also something to be said about dark themes use less power, right? So, you know, lots of arguments on both sides. Rather than me sitting down and being like, oh no, I know exactly what we need to do, why don't we just give somebody that out of the box, right? So let's go add Tailwind. Where's my NX? Here it is. So we're going to add Tailwind. And this is why adding a generator will be nice, because then I don't have to look this up every time. So to add Tailwind, we're just going to run this command here. And really, you don't even need the last app part on here. If we just add this part, and we just pnpm exec, and then we add the generate setup Tailwind, it will ask us what we want to add it to. Use light. I just can't use light themes anymore, especially with NeoVim. Using a light theme, it's like a flashbang. And that's totally correct. The other thing, set up Angular. Ole, you've always been here to help me out. Let's go ahead and grab this. And I remember you provided this document before. I have to add. No, I've got the narwhal Angular, right? It's not narwhal anymore. It's NX. This document's out of date. There we go. So our tour of heroes, and this is the nice thing about the generator is it's going to do a bunch of the stuff that Ole shared. So right off the bat, it's going to add the Tailwind. We might have to add Tailwind post CSS and CSS, and then, but we'll see. So it added those. So we've got those in place. So now the next piece that we need to do, because NX added Tailwind for us, now we just need to add Daisy. And is this my Daisy? No, it's the Angular Labs. This is Daisy. So installing Daisy is very, very easy. We just do this. So there's our Daisy. And at this point, we can do a whole bunch of stuff. Really, all we need to do is just add these to our CSS. So now we can pop open our WebStorm. I haven't opened WebStorm yet, so you need the NX plugin for Tailwind 4. It has added Tailwind 3, not... Oh, did it add Tailwind 3, not Tailwind 4? It did. We'll fix this. We'll fix it. We're gonna open and dev tour of heroes. Select this folder. All right, we need to do some more stuff before we get in and start modifying things. We'll let this run. But this is one of my other favorite tools, right? Is NCU, and let's get everything up to date. Oh man, there's a lot of stuff we need to update. But where's my Tailwind? Tailwind right here. Yeah, we definitely want to update a whole bunch of stuff. But let's start with Tailwind CSS, right? And we can just do format group, update, and we'll just do interactive. And we want to, let's do this instead. NCU Tailwind dash U. I think I can do dash UI. Yep. So we're going to update Tailwind. And that's going to update us to version 4, which means we can get rid of npm. So now we need to install a couple of things, and this is where Ole is helping out. So we've got Tailwind CSS and we've updated it, but what it didn't add were these two. So we're going to add these two. So we're going to pnpm install. And these are dev dependencies. So those two dev dependencies. So that's going to add Post CSS and Tailwind CSS to it. And so it looks like the only one we had to add was the Tailwind here. So now we need the Post CSS rc.json. So let's go ahead and can I touch? New item. Perfect. And then now I can edit that using WebStorm. I don't know what's going on here. There's some weird stuff going on there. But let's go ahead and look at the Post CSS RC. And we're going to grab this stuff here because we need the Tailwind Post CSS. So there we go. We're going to want to set up our prettier. We want this to also do JSON, CSS, and HTML. We're going to apply that. We're going to also do run on save, apply that. Okay, and okay. So prettier is now working here. So we've added that, and then now all we need to do is just import Tailwind CSS, and we're good to go. So to set this up, we go into our apps, Tour of Heroes, in our styles, source, styles.css. We don't need these Tailwind anymore. Now we can just import at Tailwind. On any quotes. Was there an @ sign on that? Nope, no @ sign. Tailwind CSS. Boom. Oh, and it's an @ import. And now it's going to tell me that I need my semicolon. So there we go. There's my import. Now I should be able to serve it and we should see Tailwind, but I want to add Daisy also. So let's go grab our Daisy. So did we? I don't think we did install that. So here we just do pnpm i-d at Daisy. Is there an @ sign in this? Nope, it's just Daisy UI at latest. No @ sign. We're going to add the latest Daisy UI. Oh yeah, the Tailwind config. Yes, I can remove that. Let's go ahead and get rid of that. Where is... There it is. Goodbye. Delete. Perfect. So we've now installed Daisy. And so the last piece after installing Daisy, we just do @plugin Daisy. And if we did everything right, it should just be Daisy, right? @plugin Daisy UI, yep. So now if we've done everything right, we should see when we go serve this that it brings up Daisy UI inside of our so we should see Daisy UI show up inside of our build right here. And we see that, yep, we got Daisy UI 5.0.37, perfect. So now if we go back here and we refresh, so now we've got a dark theme because we're preferring the dark theme, right? And we can test here if we go to accessibility. That's cool. Is it application? No. Style editor. Where is it? Let's just see. So Firefox prefers light theme dev tools. Okay, so you are on and dark mode. So when you're doing light mode, these solarized light modes are easier on the eye. They're not quite a flashbang. Oh, well, they made it easier. They made it way easier. So if I turn you off, so now we're on dark mode. Now we're on light mode. So we can swap between the modes. And this is so much easier than in Chrome. In Chrome, you have to find it and tell it that the user prefers a certain mode. In Firefox, we can just click buttons. That's cool. So there we go. We know we've got Daisy working. We know we've got Tailwind working because Daisy's working. So at this point, we want to commit this, to be honest. So added Tailwind and Daisy UI. There we go. So now we've got Tailwind and Daisy UI going. There are two other tools that I like to use. And we can grab them here. So if we jump up a directory and we go to our Angular Sudoku and we grab our package.json, we'll just pull this up here. Come on. So inside of here, there are two other tools that I like. And it's these two tools here. So the Prettier plugin to organize attributes, and then to organize imports, and then we're off to the races. So let's look this one up because I want to make sure we install it properly. Because I think we have to add some plugins to Prettier. Let's turn this back on. And let's go to the GitHub site. So to install this, you can just do this. So P npm, boom. And then after we do that, the other thing we need to do is in our Prettier RC, we just need to add a plugin. And that's going to allow us to organize the attributes. The nice thing about this is that it organizes the attributes in our Angular code. So things will always show up in the same order, regardless of the order that we write them in, which is why I really like this one. So we go here. Take a look at our prettier.rc. And we're going to add plugins. There we go. What the heck is that? Oh, it's because I copied and pasted the whole thing. That was pretty ugly. So there we go. So that adds our organized attributes. The last one we want to add is the organized imports. Pop that up. Let's pop this open. And we'll just search for this. And I think it's the same thing. We'll just make sure. So the organized imports does what it says on the tin. It just organizes the imports whenever Prettier runs, which is nice. Yeah, we just add this to the plugins and we're good to go. Like we can do more, but these ones are enough to get what we want. So let's go here. Now shut that. In our Prettier RC, get that. And let's reformat with Prettier. Okay. So we've got that. So let's commit this also. And we just added some formatters for prettier. And these are formatters that I just enjoy. And this is where I want to get into some more NX generators, because it would be nice for me to just have the NX generator do all of this for me, right? Go ahead and push that. And we're good to go. Now we can just get, well, we're not yet good to go. We want to take a look at the stuff that we want to upgrade, right? Yeah, Ole, I agree. Tailwind 4 is a lot better. You said goodbye to those files like you say goodbye to people advertising fake audiences. Exactly. If you come and advertise fake audiences in my Twitch chat, you're going to get into some trouble. Not really. But to go to sleep. Hope everyone is happy. Hey, Abradores, thank you. Reach out to me. I'll check my Reddit messages and stuff too, so that you can reach out to me however you want to. But let's stay in touch about the mentorship stuff. Thank you for being here. Anyway, let's upgrade Angular. So NCU Angular. That's the one. So let's get Angular and NGRX up to date. I don't have NGRX installed, so I don't need to update NGRX, but we definitely need to update Angular. So we're going to take we're going to update the CLI, then core. So pnpm exec nx migrate at Angular core or CLI. Let's do Twitter. Okay, sounds good. Twitter sounds good, Obradores. I'll look forward to it. And I'm off tomorrow. Tomorrow is Memorial Day in the US. So whenever you reach out, I should be available. Which, by the way, I'm looking forward to that, because tomorrow we're gonna be smoking some ribs on for Memorial Day. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to some good ribs. We'll get this up and going, and then we'll get some Tour of Heroes stuff in place. One of the things to realize about Tour of Heroes is, if you notice, we're on version 17. The latest tutorial for Angular, and it uses the old Angular logo too, right? So like the latest tutorial doesn't do Tour of Heroes. It's a better tutorial because it's much simpler, and it includes like interactive stuff going on too. However, it's not Tour of Heroes. I thought about doing this, but it's a little too simple. So we are doing Tour of Heroes from version 17. Does it even have version 18? Nope. So version 17 is the last time that Tour of Heroes was done. So if you're recommending Tour of Heroes to people, realize, yeah, ribs, man. Realize that Tour of Heroes is not available since version 17. So with version 20 coming out this week, right? It was just released, I believe, wasn't it? because we're migrating. Oh. You know what? To do some of the stuff we want to do, we need to be on version 20. PNPM exec NX migrate at Angular / CLI at next. That should take us to version 20 RC. Not another Angular version, right? Hey, Jason, I'm currently sharpening my testing skills and saw your workshop recording of ngconf on YouTube. Very good advice and a little reminder to our small conversation here. Lastly, about why using access modifiers and components, if you remember. Regards from Germany. Small conversation. By the way, thank you for showing up, Mathis. Appreciate it. And hopefully it's not too late. I know it's getting late in Europe. Can you remind me a conversation about why using the access modifiers? You're talking about private versus protected versus public, right? And I feel very strongly that most things should be marked as protected or private in your components. And the reason for that is people tend to how do we want to put this? People tend to test wrong. Let's put it that way. And what do I mean by that? Well, in a lot of unit tests that we see in Angular, and it's been this way since the beginning, even since way back in the Karma days, because that's the way Angular taught us to test, because we were calling component tests unit tests back then, because I don't think that we had quite the concept of a difference between component tests and unit tests. And so what we would do is we would create these components, and then we would test the public functions on those components, but we wouldn't test the buttons in the components, or we wouldn't test that the inputs actually worked the way that we expected them to, or things like that, right? And that leads to issues where unit testing your component isn't necessarily doing what a user will do with your component. And that's why a lot of bugs make it to production, right? Is even though we've written good test coverage, our tests aren't actually testing what we think that we're testing, right? So my solution to that, my suggestion, is that we stop putting public properties, right? We stop putting public methods on our components. I actually believed in taking it a step further and separating logic from components. Logic should live in services that are injected in components, and components should exist solely as just a way to display and react to the logic and the state of the application, right? That's what I suggest. But one step between there and, my ideal world is, if they can't access the public property to set a value, well, now they have to interact with your component through a component test, right? If they can't call a public method to submit the form, well, now we have to click the button, right? And potentials for errors to show up, we can get integration errors to show up in that method, right? But that's why. Here on stream, and you mentioned the consequences of testing. This means testing from a user perspective and working with a DOM. Yeah, we've migrated. Exactly. We're learning, right? We're learning as a community. And we're maturing as a community. And this is like it always sounds more harsh than I mean it to sound when I say, hey, as an organization, maybe we're not mature enough to be there, right? Um, it's not meant to be harsh. It's instead meant to point out that every organization, every developer, everyone is at a different journey, like a different point in their journey, right? Um, saying that my daughter is younger than me doesn't mean anything negative. It just means that she's not as old as I am. She doesn't have the life experience that I have, and things like that, right? Saying that an organization isn't mature isn't saying that the organization is bad. What it means is that the organization hasn't necessarily experienced this, and so we need to take the time to learn and experience those things. But yeah, and for me, it was a lot easier to understand what to actual test because you can't call any method of a class. Thank you for pointing me that. Hey, thank you for that. Um, that means a lot. And that, like, my goal right now is to encourage people to write software that's easy to write, but also easy to maintain. And when like easy to write is like the upfront cost that we pay for the software, right? So, when you pay for your developer's time to write software, that's the upfront cost. That's like, you go to the store to buy a car and you drop, you get the loan or whatever. That's the upfront cost of the car. But that's not the total cost of owning that vehicle, right? At some point, you're going to have to change the oil. You're going to have to change the tires. You're going to have to add gasoline, right? You're going to have to change air filters. At some point, you're probably going to have to change belts. You may have to change the transmission. You may have to, right? There's a whole bunch of other costs that come along. And like, if you look at the total cost of ownership of vehicles before you purchase them, there are a lot of sites out there that will give you this. And, over the course of a life, you may spend, $500-600 more per month for the time you own that vehicle because of, all the expenses you might incur. Other vehicles might only be 100 or 200 more, because they're cheaper to own. And that's the way I want to look at software now too, right? Like, we pay that upfront cost, and a lot of us are very good at calculating that upfront cost. But what is the cost of owning that software for a year, right? How many bug fixes are we putting in? How many, how difficult is it for somebody to come in and make changes to that code? In 3 years, right? It hasn't been touched for a couple of years. What is the cost of that code in 5 years, right? And in 10 years? And at some point down the road, where is it so costly to maintain that software that now we have to incur another rewrite, right? Ideally, we would never have another rewrite, and ideally, we would keep that cost of ownership low. But that's the thought process. And that when we're talking about AI, right? Like, AI writes code, it does it better than us. Right? It's faster, not necessarily better code, but it's better at writing code than we are because it can do it faster. It can do more, right? Like, and the code isn't necessarily better because the upfront cost of AI code is very, very low, right? But what is the cost of that AI code in 6 months when you have to go back and make a change? The AI isn't going to know how to make that change, right? What is the cost of that AI code in a year, in 3 years? At what point does that AI code become so difficult to maintain that you're doing a rewrite? And that's where our benefit comes in as engineers. But thank you for that feedback. I really appreciate it. So let's take a look and just make sure, because we're going to Angular 20, so we just need to get schematics. And this should get us to Angular 20, at which point we're going to serve our application. And make sure we haven't broken anything seriously yet. So there we go. There were no migrations.json. We should be able to just do our pnpm install with no frozen lock file. See, I'm curious about these ignore scripts. Pnpm approve builds. Because I want to make sure that we're running these pieces that help. Okay. So now pnpm exec nx serve tour of heroes. Our Angular 20 stuff should work, right? And I'm hoping that the nx serve is kicking off our okay, so we need to upgrade TypeScript. So yep, pnpm. So NCU format group. So we have to be on TypeScript 5.8 for this to work. So TypeScript can go to 5.83. What do we got here? We've got that. That's all fine. ESLint. This is all fine. Yeah. So we're going to do an NCU. We're going to format group. And we're going to do a -UI. And we're going to run all of this stuff. But we're also going to add in prettier types node. Right now, we're going to grab these ones too. And this is just going to be everything that we're going to upgrade at this point in time. And this should allow everything to run. So the AI generated application of your talk wasn't so bad at all. Seems to be Junie is the name. Yeah, Junie was the name. Should know a bit more about best practices to avoid the classical subscribe on init. Yeah, and that, like, I'm sure there are things we could do. So I need to run pnpm approve builds again. We're gonna run all. Yes. The like I don't want to pick on AI here. Because like I called out in my talk and like I've called out before, AI is trained on what we do as humans, right? And so the classical subscribe in on init, Junie encountered that enough in the code that it was trained on that it determined that was okay, right? And so it's not that Junie sucks, it's that enterprise software in general sucks, right? I mean, you guys know this, right? Everywhere you go, enterprise level software has all sorts of just weird stuff like that, and that's our benefit, and that's where you can really start to distinguish yourself as a developer, is when you start providing the benefit better than what we typically get. That's when you'll start moving into senior roles. That's when people will start calling you into meetings to discuss architectural decisions, right? To discuss direction and things like that, because the direction you're providing is not the direction that everybody else is giving. And so it's not that AI is bad, it's that AI is trained on our code and our code is bad. That's the real issue. So, you know, AI does hallucinate and AI does produce bad code. I'm not going to say like AI is perfect. But what I will say is that when it comes to writing code, AI probably has us beaten. Um, right? But that's not what our job entails, right? That's only a small portion of our job. Um, all right, so now that we've got all of that done, now we should be able to serve Tour of Heroes. And this is why, like, Warp is probably my favorite terminal because Warp already had determined, hey, you've cleaned up a whole bunch of stuff. Let's go ahead and serve the application, right? So there we go. It's all serving. And now we've got a problem because we're providing server routing and it's saying, did we intend to do server rendering? Probably. So let's take a look. Plug in Angular compiler, appconfig.server. So let's go take a look at our appconfig.server. And this is like my experience with SSR is minimal. We'll put it that way, right? My experience with SSR is minimal. So we're going to be doing some learning here together. Dog is going crazy because somebody just knocked on our door. Okay. Let's grab Tour of Heroes. Let's take a look at our server.
Sorry, I was gonna come. Thank you. Oh, it's fine.
This is the server.ts, right? That's the one it's complaining about. App.config.server. Let's take a look at app.config.server.ts. So inside of here, in our imports, provide server routing. So we do have provide server rendering. Where does provide server routing come from in Angular 20? Time to go look at the documentation. So we want to go here and we want to be on next. Angular.dev, and in our docs, let's find provide server routing right here. Page not found. Well, for right now, we can just pull this out, right? Let's not pull it out. Let's go Angular 20 provide server routing. So here, this is definitely not what we want. Provide server routing. Provide. Update provide server rendering to use with routes and remove provide server routing. Okay, perfect. Once again, thank you to Angular Labs for this. And we can see here. So they've even got the pull request for it. But so provide server rendering moves from Angular platform to Angular SSR. So let's make sure we do that. Angular SSR. And then our provide server rendering. We no longer have this. Instead, this goes in here and it goes to with route. Is that how it's supposed to be? Provide server rendering to use with routes and remove provide server routing. Let's go take a look at this again. Builders get workspace. Server routing. Let's just see if inside of here with routes, that's not there. What does this one do? Okay, so that adds that. Server routes. Provide server routing, server routes. So with route should come from Angular SSR. So here we should be able to grab with routes. There we go. There we go. That should build now. And it did build. And so now our application is up and running. So we should be able to see that, yeah, so we can also see that our SSR is running because we hydrated two components. And this is one of the cool things about the new NX, right? Is NX is actually running the browser and the server for us at the same time, which is very, very cool. So we've got our server and our browser running, and it's serving it on localhost. So we don't have to have two windows running our browser and our server at the same time. So very cool. And we can see that we've got SSR running because we are getting hydration. The cool thing is in the future we can add defer, and we can make it so that it doesn't hydrate until we interact with it, which is something that I really want to take a look at. So let's go back to our tour of heroes. And we can, like, thank you so much to Angular Labs. These guys are amazing. Just the amount of work that they put into the Angular can I use and all that other stuff. It's a single web server, right? So with Angular, like when you serve Angular normally as a SPA, we have just a single web server, right? When we convert Angular into SSR and SSG, there's server-side rendering that takes place. And that's where we start to get stuff like the hydration showing up. So if we take a look at this hydration, right? If we take a look at our network tab here and we refresh, we'll see that we get the initial like the initial bundle here, and well, our local host bundle. If we look, we can see that this local host bundle that we got is basically the page, because it's been rendered on the server. So we get 22K, and we can even look at this if we flip it over to raw, right? So the raw HTML, we can see that we're actually getting the styles and all of that stuff, right? But the HTML itself has been rendered. So we can see that we're getting all of this stuff rendered without the Angular stuff in it. And maybe this is easier to see if I make this bigger, right? So we can see that like the app root here, and then if we look at this one, that's the hot module reloading, right? Polyfills our main, has a whole bunch of stuff in it. This is the actual Angular components that it's going to hydrate, right? These are our environment stuff that comes across because of that. Right, we don't even get Zone.js until after like we've transferred our HTML document, right? And then we get our browser and our Angular core and all of that, and then we start getting our components. Right, so we're getting pieces of our component. We're getting pieces of our application. So our entire application is here, even though you know we haven't loaded Angular yet, because we haven't even gotten Angular until here, right? Angular core, all of this stuff didn't happen until much later. And if we right, we can see the waterfall here. This piece finished here, and the piece that gives us Angular happens later, right? Like a couple milliseconds later, but the HTML to serve the page is there. And we can take a look at our performance, or I haven't actually used this performance. We start recording this, and we just refresh, and then we do that. What do we get? That's cool. We'll have to dig into this stuff later. I haven't used this stuff before. But when we do SSR and SSG, um, some of the stuff is rendered on the server, right? So SSR server side rendering, SSG static site generation. So with SSG, we can actually generate some stuff on the server, right? And server side rendering does the same. So we'll be taking a look at that too, to be able to get this hydration model. The S okay, what okay, that makes more sense. What NX is giving us is NX is telling us that to serve it, we depend on the SSR side of stuff running, right? In the past, with NX, you had to start up two windows, one that would run the SSR stuff, and the other that would run the actual Angular site, right? With NX 20, or is it 21? Which one are we on? I think it's 21. With NX 21, we get this concept of long running tasks. So the SSR side of things is a long running task, and NX no longer has to kill it. If I wasn't running this on Windows, we would actually get a better console that would allow us to see the output from both of these, right? But because it's giving us the ability to run the long running tasks, it kicks off the SSR piece and then kicks off our server piece. And it doesn't have to wait for the SSR piece to complete. It starts it and then it starts the server, and right. So that's the benefit of NX21 here. All right. Man, trying to decide. I probably need to end now. My family's home, um, and I can hear them talking about wanting to go do some stuff. I started a little bit late today at noon, um, but I've been going for 2 hours. Let's stop here and we'll pick this up on. Um, we'll pick up some more tomorrow morning. I I mean, I'm off tomorrow for Labor Day, so I get up in the morning, get the ribs in the smoker, and then we'll come and we'll stream some stuff and actually work on Tour of Heroes. Um, yeah, you guys, thanks for being here. Yeah, I will. I'll make sure to let you guys know how they were. But thank you everybody for being here. We'll do a little bit of a stream tomorrow, just so that we can actually start writing Tour of Heroes. Um, we spent a lot of time discussing, various things, and that's fine. But I would like to write some code and get some actual hydration going on. So, hey, thank you guys for being here. Thank you everybody for just being wonderful, being a great community, and thank you for the amazing questions. Like Ostima, your questions were amazing. Mathis, yours were great. Pigeon, I love your name, by the way. Pigeon Guided Missile sounds awesome. Great questions too. Thank you guys for stopping me and correcting me, and just for being amazing. We'll see you guys tomorrow if you can make it. If not, we'll be back next Sunday, and pick things up again.